Chapter 3879. The entire martial epic went from its peak to the end of the epic. Such a sudden change shocked everyone, be it the people of the martial epic or the other ancient epics. This was because they had never experienced such a situation before. This was because there had never been an epic that reached its peak state all the way to the end of the last epic. Normally, an epic would enter a long period of decline before its end. However, because of Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun, the martial epic had maintained its peak state all this time. Just when everyone thought that the martial epic had hope of lasting forever, the martial epic suddenly entered a period of destruction. The sudden horror of death enveloped everyone. In an instant, all the half-step sovereigns were alarmed. Each of them covered a large area of land. Within this area, even the destructive energy of heaven and earth couldn't invade. Many heavenly venerates also took action, helping to stabilize the situation in the Fortune realm. The martial epic had always been at its peak state. Not only did it place a huge burden on the martial epic's heavenly Tao, but it also created a large number of peak experts. At such a crucial moment, these heavenly venerates and half-step sovereigns could be relied on without a doubt. This was because the martial epic was their epic. If the martial epic was destroyed, it would be very difficult for them to advance further. Immediately, everyone's wills became a stronghold, and they managed to barely stabilize the situation of the martial epic. However, everyone knew that this was just the beginning. As time went by, the destructive power of the martial epic would grow increasingly denser until it destroyed the martial epic. Outside the realm, countless ancient epics did their best to stabilize the situation of their own epic. Fortunately, they had long since experienced this. This was not their first time experiencing this kind of epic change, so they quickly thought of a way to stabilize the situation. Furthermore, they sent their armies to watch covetously, because every time an era came to an end, it was like a banquet of the century for ancient eras like them. However, they still did not dare to act rashly, as there were still two horrifying sovereigns in the martial epic. If the two of them made a move, no matter how many armies the ancient epic sent, it would be useless. Hence, they were waiting for the two of them to make a move. It was not just them. Many experts of the martial epic were also waiting for Qin Jun and Wu Jun, two peak existences of the great epics, to make a move. It could solve this problem. Before everyone's expectations, Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun finally appeared. The two of them possessed great magic power and boundless magic power. In just a moment, they stabilized the situation of the entire martial epic. The destruction everywhere finally came to a stop. However, even so, it only delayed the destruction of the martial epic. The destructive power continued to wreak havoc. Yi Shiwen walked in the chaos and comprehended. This destructive power came from a void. It could even be said that it permeated the entire martial epic, like it was setting fire to oneself. The stronger the martial epic, the stronger this destructive power. It was practically proportional. Xiao Chan was certain that the previous ancient epics had not faced such horrifying destructive power. It was precisely because the martial epic was too strong that it attracted such a horrifying threat. Now, Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun were both suppressing the destructive power from the martial epic. However, this destructive power was still growing stronger and stronger. Slowly, even Yi Shiwen felt a horrifying pressure. It was similar to the backlash of the laws. However, this time, it was the backlash of the laws of destruction. The 3,000 martial Daos on Yi Shiwen's body turned into 3,000 beams of rainbow light, sweeping through the world and destroying the destructive power. On the other side, Qin Jun was also suppressing the various destructive powers. The 36-rank primal chaos green lotus materialized around him, suppressing everything. "I'm afraid we can't continue like this," Yi Shiwen said to Qin Jun across the distant primal chaos. "There's no other way. We can only hold on." Qin Jun said slowly, "If we can't hold on, the martial epic will be destroyed, and we will all be severely injured. Hence, we don't have much time left. This is the most dangerous moment for us. Once we make it through, the martial epoch will be saved, and we will be able to achieve the Tao, Qin Jun said. Yi Shiwen nodded. Although this situation was unexpected, it was within his and Qin Jun's expectations. Previously, he discovered that there would be an external force dragging the martial epoch into a period of decline every once in a while. It wasn't just because there were more and more half-step rulers and heavenly venerables which occupied more resources. It was like a program. When it reached a fixed point, it would enter the time of destruction. This force was simply too horrifying, which led to the continuous replacement of the martial epoch. Although the replacement of the martial epoch was a process of continuous improvement and improvement, this process was not irreversible. However, I think not everyone is willing to let us wait until that time. Yi Shiwen had just finished speaking when a figure appeared in the distant primal chaos. This figure was holding an incomparably huge longbow in his hand. This longbow carried an unimaginable fluctuation of the laws, making people feel extremely horrified and creeped out. Bao Sovereign, if you dare to appear before us, you will die, Qin Jun said as he looked at the figure in front of him. This was a figure who had become a ruler by relying on the archery Tao in a distant epoch. However, that was a long time ago. No one knew how powerful the Bao Sovereign was now. It was said that his main body was the longbow in his hand. It was a terrifying bow that had been passed down from many epochs. He had once shot a ruler to death with one arrow. That was his peak achievement. That's right, it's me. However, the one who will die today is not me, but you, the Bao Sovereign said. Either you give up your unrealistic thoughts, or you will die. The Bao Sovereign sneered. He raised the longbow in his hand and then pinched it with his other hand, pulling out a terrifying arrow. This arrow was tens of millions of miles long, like a boundless waterfall. It was majestic and boundless. This terrifying arrow could pierce through an epoch. Even the epic heavenly Tao couldn't stop it. Whoosh! That terrifying arrow pierced through the primal chaos, forming a terrifying energy tide that was like an incomparably huge blade, cutting the entire primal chaos in half. Countless primal chaos was instantly annihilated, disappearing into the endless. Suddenly, a primal chaos green lotus appeared in the chaos and blocked the terrifying arrow. Then, the lotus leaves of the primal chaos green lotus bloomed one by one. Boom! This arrow annihilated everything. However, it still couldn't pierce through the martial epoch. It was blocked by the chaos green lotus. Can you block every single one of my arrows? The Bao Emperor slowly asked. Bao Emperor, you don't need to waste time. Your arrows are useless. It's useless to rely on you alone. Yi Shiwen said, Martial Lord, you are indeed quick-witted. You immediately thought of our existence. Accompanied by a majestic voice, a silhouette appeared in front of everyone. It was a majestic silhouette, a person with an incomparably powerful yang qi, soaring into the sky. The entire chaos space seemed to have fallen into a different environment because of this person's existence. Young Lord, you are actually still alive. Qin Jun couldn't help but say, Rumor has it that you have already passed away. Eternity has yet to arrive. How can I die? The young lord laughed loudly and said. Yi Shiwen immediately knew who this person was. Rumor had it that in the first few eras, there were yin and yang eras. In one of the yang eras, a supreme ruler was born, and he was called the Yang Lord. Since the Yang Lord is already here, then the Yin Lord should be here too. Rumor has it that you are inseparable. Yi Shiwen said lightly. I didn't expect that after so many eras, there are still people who still remember us. Another magnetic voice rang out, and a figure appeared. It was like a geometrical mass of yin qi, but it was upright and upright. Nowadays, yin and yang were all about the harmony of yin and yang. However, whether it was the Yin Lord or the Yang Lord, there was another possibility. Yin and yang did not need to be combined to walk an unprecedented path. Without a doubt, these people were all outstanding talents who had once shone in the long river of history. Each one of them could be said to be unprecedented. Yi Shiwen undoubtedly wanted to sit down and discuss with such people. However, they were powerful enemies who had always wanted to kill him. So, he couldn't afford to be lenient towards them. Because I killed you before, not the current you, but when I was going through the tribulation, Yishuin said lightly. The Yin Lord's face instantly turned extremely ugly. He had been killed by Yi Shiwen before, and no matter what form it took, it was a great humiliation. You are provoking me. The Yin Lord looked at Yi Shiwen coldly and said, It's not enough. Just the three of you are not enough. Yi Shiwen did not answer the Yin Lord and only said lightly. At the same time, he looked into the depths of the chaos. What if you include me? Another extremely terrifying voice sounded, and a terrifying and huge figure appeared in the chaos. This figure was a tongue snake that was tens of thousands of miles long. This tongue snake suddenly transformed into a tall and strong man. He looked at Yi Shiwen with a cold and murderous look in his eyes. Tung Huang, rumor has it that you are the first snake since the creation of the world, the ancestor of all snakes. I didn't expect to have a chance to see you again, Yi Shiwen said lightly without panic. Chapter 3880. Any one of the four rulers was once invincible. Now that the four of them had come together, one could imagine how terrifying they were. Each of them could suppress an era. Just the four of you are not enough to kill the two of us. Yi Shiwen shook his head and said, We don't have to kill you. As long as the two of you give up your unrealistic thoughts, we can still get along well. Bao Emperor held his World Destroyer bow and said, These four people didn't come here to kill Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun. The strength of the two was indeed terrifying enough. At least one or two of them would die. Therefore, no one was willing to risk their lives for others. Only when they were alive could they have unlimited possibilities. Once they died, there would be nothing left. People like them understood the meaning of death the best. We have already come this far. Do you think we can give up? Our Tao is up there. Qin Jun walked to Yi Shiwen's side silently. His eyes were filled with determination, and the raging flames of war were burning. If that's the case, then there's nothing to talk about. Since the two of you insist on dying, then there's nothing we can do. Emperor Tung sneered and said, Right now, the two of you can't use your combat strength at all, right? Qin Jun said coldly, Yes, but it's still possible for us to improve in a short period of time. As long as we kill the two of you in the shortest time possible, this matter will not be unsalvageable. Yi Shiwen said indifferently. How arrogant! The Bao Emperor shouted loudly and directly attacked. The longbow in his hand suddenly pulled out a terrifying arrow that was tens of millions of miles long and directly shot towards Yi Shiwen. Rumble! This terrifying arrow tore the chaos apart. Bao Emperor's attack was extremely terrifying. Even in the fortune world, one could feel a terrifying force sweeping towards them. Yi Shiwen's feet were like nails that were nailed into the chaotic void. He couldn't move because he couldn't dodge. If he dodged, the arrow would directly pierce through the fortune world. The Bao Emperor had such strength, and he also had such capabilities. His seemingly casual arrow was actually the most terrifying. Yi Shiwen raised his arm high and transformed into a shocking sword rainbow. Then he suddenly chopped down. The sword rainbow ruthlessly chopped down on the arrow, directly slicing it into nothingness. It was extremely terrifying. Two extremely frightening waves of the great path ripples directly destroyed everything. At that critical moment, a figure instantly tore through the chaos. A sword swept out from the chaos and directly slashed towards Yi Shiwen. The Bao Emperor's attack, just now, was like a cover for him. It was Emperor Tung. At the same time, on the other side, the Qin Lord, Yin Lord, and Yang Lord were already fighting, and another battlefield was opened. The two battlefields exploded in the midst of the primal chaos. Everyone in the entire primal chaos, be it the martial epic or the ancient epic, paid attention to this battle. Everyone understood that the outcome of this battle might decide the survival of the martial epic. In fact, it could even change the situation of the entire chaos world. If it were in the past, Yi Shiwen and Qin Lord's strength could be considered terrifying. No one would worry about them losing. This was also not the first time Yi Shiwen was surrounded by a few rulers. However, it was different this time. He still had to divide his attention to suppress the power of destruction in the entire martial epic. It was unknown how much strength he could display. Moreover, these people were clearly much more terrifying than the Storm Heaven Monarch and the others. We can't let the two lords be distracted during the battle. Do your best to suppress the power of destruction until the two lords return. At this moment, a half-step ruler shouted loudly. Then, all the magic power in his body burned. All sorts of great path laws surged out, suppressing the creation realm within a radius of billions of miles. Whether they were infected or if they wanted to survive, it was time for them to make a choice. No one could sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. Because of Yi Shiwen and Sheen Lord, many people who could not break through to the half-step ruler level broke through. Many heavenly venerables were born because of this. Now, it was time to pay the price. Many heavenly venerables, half-step rulers, and even sovereign emperors burned themselves to stabilize the strength of the martial epic. Horrifying auras soared into the sky, stirring up the primal chaos and shocking those ancient epics. With the current strength of the martial epic, even if it was destroyed, it would still be an overlord among the many ancient epics. The originally stronger demonic epic and others were not worth mentioning before the martial epic. They were not on the same level. This was because the current martial epic was too strong, putting too much pressure on them. Behind them, the half-step rulers, heavenly venerables, and sovereign emperors burned themselves to stabilize the situation of the martial epic. Hence, Yi Shiwen could use more strength to deal with the strong enemies before him. Be it Gong Huang or Tung Huang, they both knew that it would not be easy to kill him. Or rather, the two of them did not expect to kill him. They only hoped to delay him. He had to suppress the power of destruction of the martial epic. Hence, the longer it took, the more severe the consequences would be. Hence, he did not have much time left. Boom, boom, boom. All sorts of battles became more and more intense. What a great martial monarch. I can't help but admire you. You have not cultivated for a long time, but you're already this strong. If you continue to grow, your future will be limitless. Why are you making a mistake? Tung Huang said with a loud laugh. He looked like he had victory in his grasp. It's still too early to say this. Yi Shiwen's expression was cold and emotionless. Tung Huang, who was in front of him, attacked repeatedly. With every wave of his hand, the primal chaos was torn apart and shattered. It was truly terrifying. At this moment, a seal flew out from Yi Shiwen's head. It was the martial sovereign seal. The revered martial seal flew up, and countless golden lights suddenly poured into it. This made the entire revered martial seal burst out with shocking rays of light, and transformed into another Yi Shiwen. You used the golden light of virtue as your physical body, Tung Huang said in shock. How much golden light of virtue did you have to waste it like this? Just as he finished speaking, the Yi Shiwen in front of him disappeared. When he spoke again, Yi Shiwen had already appeared in front of Gong Huang. His fists were like two dragons as they punched out. Not good, it's a diversion. At this moment, Tung Huang suddenly realized that Yi Shiwen's real target was Gong Huang. Because Gong Huang kept attacking, Yi Shiwen couldn't concentrate on dealing with Tung Huang. If this continued, Yi Shiwen would be worn down by the two of them. Rather than injuring 10 fingers, it was better to break one finger. Everyone understood this logic. However, when he wanted to go and help, he was blocked by Yi Shiwen's golden body of virtue. This golden body of virtue was formed from countless golden lights of virtue. It was incomparably sturdy and not as weak as ordinary incarnations. It could even be said to be very difficult to deal with. Being entangled by this golden body of virtue, it was impossible for Tung Huang to escape in a short period of time. However, Gong Huang is still a sovereign realm expert. He won't be defeated so quickly, right? Tung Huang comforted himself. Gong Huang was a middle-stage sovereign realm expert. Moreover, Yi Shiwen was entangled by the martial epic and couldn't use his full strength. This was their chance. However, he was shocked when he saw the situation on the other side. He had thought that the Bao Emperor would be able to block Yi Shiwen for a while. However, Yi Shiwen had defeated the Bao Emperor in the first place. Obviously, Gong Huang wasn't a match for Yi Shiwen in close combat. Although Gong Huang was proficient in all kinds of close combat martial arts and divine abilities, he was more proficient in archery and sniping from a long distance. However, he was now in front of him. If it was an ordinary person, it would be fine. However, this person was Yi Shiwen. He was a martial monarch and was proficient in 3,000 martial arts. In this aspect, it could be said that he had met an expert. In just 2 or 3 moves, Gong Huang was forced to retreat by Yi Shiwen. All of his defenses collapsed in an instant. Yi Shiwen's attacks were even faster. No matter how Gong Huang tried to escape, it was useless. No matter how he tried to increase the distance between them, Yi Shiwen would always be able to catch up. Yi Shiwen's movement technique was displayed incisively and vividly. Finally, Yi Shiwen seized the opportunity when Gong Huang retreated again and again. He blasted out a punch. This punch could only be described as terrifying and peerless. Before Yi Shiwen had become a sovereign realm, he was already terrifying enough. Not to mention now, after stepping into the sovereign realm, this punch of his was almost like the entire world was smashing down. This was a kind of cosmic wonder that was rarely seen since ancient times. This punch directly pierced through all of Gong Huang's defenses. All of Gong Huang's defenses collapsed in an instant. Then, Yi Shiwen's punch blasted into his body. Boom! Gong Huang's body flew out, and his entire body was blasted into pieces. This punch had pierced through his flesh, and the majestic power it carried caused his flesh to collapse. Yi Shiwen's entire body was burning with the golden light of virtue. He relied on the power of the golden light of virtue to forcibly restore his strength to the peak. Then he took a step forward, and his big foot suddenly stomped in the direction of Gong Huang. Gong Huang didn't even have time to react before he was directly trampled into pieces. Even his spirit was instantly ignited and turned into nothingness. Yi Shiwen, who had restored his strength to the peak, was this terrifying. He picked up the longbow, pulled the bowstring, and suddenly shot an arrow. Chapter 3881. Yi Shiwen drew his longbow and shot an arrow. It was even more powerful than the arrow that the Bao Emperor had shot a moment ago. The weapon spirit of the longbow manifested and wanted to resist Yi Shiwen. However, how could Yi Shiwen allow it to do as it wished? He shattered it on the spot, and all the resistance from the longbow disappeared. The arrow that was tens of millions of miles long tore through everything instantly and flew towards Yin Lord and Yang Lord. The two of them worked together and managed to suppress Qin Jun, who was held back by the collapse of the martial epic. Yi Shiwen's arrow was like the Milky Way falling from the sky and struck Yin Lord directly. Yin Lord was completely caught off guard. Even he did not expect that an attack would cross the entire chaos space and sweep towards him. Or rather, he did not expect that Bao Emperor would be severely injured or even killed by Yi Shiwen in such a short period of time. At the same time, it was also because Yi Shiwen's arrow was too terrifying. Yin Jun let out a blood-curdling scream, and his body instantly exploded. Although he was not killed directly, he was severely injured. As for Yin Lord and Yang Lord, there was a gap in their joint attack, and they could not completely suppress Qin Jun like before. Qin Jun instantly felt the pressure on him decrease greatly. He could not be bothered to thank Yi Shiwen and hurriedly pounced towards Yin Lord. As the saying went, it was better to break one than to injure all 10 fingers. Qin Jun understood this as well, and it was precisely because of this that he wanted to kill them all. Yang Lord also understood this and hurriedly went forward to stop them. In an instant, the entire chaos space turned into a terrifying battlefield for the two of them. After helping Qin Jun, Yi Shiwen didn't stay idle, because Teng Huang had already pounced on him, taking advantage of the moment when Yi Shiwen shot that arrow. He had already pounced over. Emperor Ting opened up his palms and punched out. Almost in an instant, the entire heaven and earth was torn apart, and the entire chaos was pierced through. In an instant, Emperor Teng's skills soared to a higher level, and he rushed to the late-stage ruler. When Yi Shiwen killed Bao Emperor just now, he already felt a huge sense of danger. Who would dare to underestimate Yi Shiwen now? Wouldn't that be courting death? It had been very difficult for him to deal with Yi Shiwen, even though he had the help of the Bao Emperor. Let alone now. He had to do his best. It would have been fine if he didn't participate, but since he did, he didn't have much time left. Emperor Teng's entire body was burning fiercely, and terrifying laws of the Great Tao were burning as well. Yi Shiwen, on the other hand, took a step forward. Not to be outdone, he also clenched his fist and started fighting with Emperor Teng. Boom! The two fists set off a terrifying tide in the primal chaos, almost drowning everything. The brilliant divine light scattered, looking incomparably beautiful, but in the eyes of the experts of the various ancient eras, it was incomparably terrifying. Ha ha ha! It's been a long time since I've had such a good fight. Yi Shiwen laughed out loud. In the chaos, his figure swept across and bombarded Teng Huang with punches. His entire body flickered with the golden light of virtue, making him look like a golden statue. In the chaos, he became the only source of illumination. The more he fought, the stronger he became, and the more terrifying he became. His entire aura rose, and every punch he threw was on par with Emperor Teng. However, different from Yi Shiwen, Emperor Teng's aura dissipated one after another. The strength that he forcibly raised was completely at a disadvantage when he met Yi Shiwen. He originally had the strongest physical body, so he could do whatever he wanted. Even the destructive power of the epic replacement couldn't hurt him at all. However, now that he met Yi Shiwen, he had completely met his nemesis. All these years, Yi Shiwen had refined countless golden lights of virtue into his body. He could be said to be invincible in the world, and he had no problem facing the terrifying destructive power of the era replacement. The more Emperor Teng fought, the more terrifying he felt. When he fought with Yi Shiwen, there were horrifying wounds appearing all over his body. His strength also varied from person to person. How much chi of virtue did he refine? The more Emperor Teng fought, the more terrifying he felt. Why did he feel that the golden lights of virtue on Yi Shiwen's body were free, and he could casually release a large amount of it? Facing such an opponent, no matter how he fought, he couldn't even move Yi Shiwen. Finally, when he was forced to this point, Emperor Teng suddenly turned into a horrifying giant snake, the ancestor of all snakes in the world, the horrifying Teng snake. His entire body emitted a shocking divine radiance, and he shuttled through the chaos at an extremely fast speed. The tail swept downwards at lightning speed. Any kind of attack was nothing in the face of this attack. Boom! Yi Shiwen raised his hand and directly blocked this horrifying attack. World of Laws! Yi Shiwen shouted, and instantly his entire body turned into a horrifying giant that was billions of miles tall, and the entire chaos could see his terrifying existence. Compared to Emperor Teng's body, he was not any smaller. The two of them fought all the way into the depths of the chaos of the universe. The battle broke out in the chaos that was filled with terrifying destructive power. Martial Monarch, you won't be able to hold on for long. No matter how hard you try, you can't save the fate of the entire martial era. Emperor Teng roared loudly. But at least it's enough to kill you. Yi Shiwen shouted loudly. Many people hurriedly looked into the chaos. In the chaos, the battle between Yi Shiwen and Emperor Teng had already entered a white-hot stage. Facing Yi Shiwen, who had forcefully raised his strength to the peak, Emperor Teng gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. Martial Monarch, you've gone too far. Since you're like this, then don't blame me. Suddenly, Emperor Teng opened his bloody mouth, and in an instant, an incomparably huge formation appeared around Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen, I'm not humiliating you by using this sky-devouring great formation to destroy you. Emperor Teng roared. Yi Shiwen saw that he was already in a horrifying formation. This formation was layered, and all kinds of horrifying attacks fell down like tides. Around this formation, there were actually 4 horrifying figures, and they were all Emperor Teng. No, those are clones. They're all clones. Yi Shiwen immediately realized that those were not his real body, But even if they were just clones, these clones looked extremely horrifying, because these clones were not created randomly. They were formed after countless years of refining, and their combat power was comparable to the real body. Just like the clones formed by Yi Shiwen's golden light of virtue and the martial sovereign seal. This is a great formation that I've meticulously researched. No one has ever been able to escape from it. Using this great formation to send you to your grave is not a bad thing. Emperor Tung roared, and his huge snake face was incomparably cold. Countless murderous intents covered the sky and the earth, and were about to drown Yi Shiwen. Above Yi Shiwen's head, the martial sovereign seal released layers of defense. But even so, the murderous intents still pierced through many layers of defense. The layers of defense were constantly being repaired and pierced through again. Terrifying murderous intents were coming from all directions, and there was no way to escape. I once used this great formation to trap and kill a ruler, and now you'll be the second. Emperor Tung's eyes became colder, and he said, "You still managed to escape. Then you're going against the heavens." Yi Shiwen let the murderous intents bombard him, and said, "The level of this great formation is not high enough to kill me." On Yi Shiwen's body, the golden light of virtue burned again. In an instant, his aura became 10 times more terrifying, and turned into a terrifying attack that pierced through the entire great formation. What? Emperor Tung's eyes widened, and he felt that this was impossible. However, Yi Shiwen's figure had already taken advantage of this gap, and killed his way out of the great formation towards one of Emperor Tung's clones. Bang! The huge clone of Emperor Tung was directly pierced through by Yi Shiwen's punch. Yi Shiwen was equally terrifying. Boom! The huge clone of Emperor Tung exploded into pieces on the spot. Bang! 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 With lightning speed, Yi Shiwen destroyed the remaining 3 incarnations of Tung Huang. Although these incarnations had almost the same battle strength as the main body, their bodies were still not as strong as the main bodies. Even the real body was not a match for Yi Shiwen, let alone his clones. In just a moment, all of them were killed. With that, the monstrous formation vanished into thin air. "How dare you kill my clones?" Emperor Tung was enraged. "Not only will I kill your clones, but I will also kill you." Yi Shiwen rushed to the front of Emperor Tung. A martial lord seal appeared in his hand. Bang! The martial lord seal smashed down, and a huge crack appeared on Emperor Tung's huge head. Emperor Tung was in pain, and he retreated continuously. However, he could not escape at all. Yi Shiwen unleashed 3,000 attacks in an instant, and all 3,000 martial arts were unleashed in an instant. Boom! Emperor Tung screamed in pain, and his head exploded on the spot. Blood splattered everywhere. A small snake flew out from Emperor Tung's huge body, and it was trying to escape. It was Emperor Tung's primordial spirit. However, even in the chaos, it could not hide from Yi Shiwen's eyes. Yi Shiwen took a step forward, and with a stomp, he crushed the small snake into pieces, and it completely turned into nothingness. Yet another peerless hegemon had fallen, just like that. Emperor Tung's huge body was also kept by Yi Shiwen, and it turned into a ball of blood essence, which he watered on the world tree. After being watered by the Dominator's blood essence, the world tree instantly became incomparably tall, and it was becoming more and more like the legendary world tree. Then, without saying anything, Yi Shiwen rushed to Qin Jun's battlefield. Chapter 3882. After beheading Tung Huang, Yi Shiwen flew towards Qin Jun's battlefield like an arrow. At this moment, Qin Jun was already fighting with Yin Lord and Yang Lord. Yin Lord was severely injured by Yi Shiwen's arrow just now, so he was already prepared and alert. Furthermore, he had to guard against Yi Shiwen's possible intervention at any time, so he could not do his best to deal with Qin Jun. Just now, Qin Jun had managed to achieve a stalemate. However, at the same time, Qin Jun was unable to concentrate his full strength. The destructive power that was emanating from the void was frantically crushing over at every moment. He was different from Yin Lord and Yang Lord. He only needed to take care of himself. He still had to suppress the entire martial epic, so he could not just take care of himself. Emperor Tung, Gong Emperor, In Lord, and Yang Lord saw this moment and came personally because they knew that Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun could not use their full strength. In Lord and Yang Lord were still trying their best to deal with Qin Jun. Yi Shiwen suddenly rushed into the battlefield, and in just a moment, he was already in front of them. Even though the two of them had battle-hardened strength, they were still terrified. This was because Yi Shiwen's arrival meant that the Bao Emperor and the Tung Emperor had been annihilated on the other battlefield. This was the only way for Yi Shiwen to have the time to come here. They turned to look. Indeed, the other battlefield was already quiet. "Hurry up and leave," In Lord shouted. "Isn't it a little too late to leave now?" Yi Shiwen sneered and said. Unbeknownst to him, his figure had already appeared in front of In Jun. He blocked In Lord's escape route. "Martial Monarch, do you want to fight to the death with me?" Seeing that, In Monarch hurriedly roared. "A life-and-death struggle? With just you guys?" Yi Shiwen looked coldly at In Lord and said. An unimaginably terrifying aura erupted from Yi Shiwen's body. "I've already given you a chance. Since you chose to stand out, you must be prepared to pay the price. You won't die if you don't seek death. I think you should understand this logic." Yi Shiwen sneered and said, "Wu Lord is right. Since you're here, don't leave." Qin Jun sneered and said, taking advantage of the fact that his strength was suppressed to come and kill him, he was truly enraged. "Fight out with them." In Lord roared and pounced towards Yi Shiwen, while the Yang Lord pounced towards Qin Lord. One on each side, stubbornly resisting. Boom! In Jun directly attacked Yi Shiwen. The Yin Qi turned into a huge dragon and pounced towards Yi Shiwen. The entire primal chaos was suppressed by this huge dragon and collapsed. In Jun was determined to fight to the death as soon as he arrived. He directly rushed towards Yi Shiwen's head. He had been forced to this extent by Yi Shiwen. Then, he had nothing to fear. Since retreating was useless, he would fight. He had seen too many powerful enemies in his life. However, he had never bowed down to any of them. He had never admitted defeat. So, he had decided to fight against Yi Shiwen. This was a terrifying collision. Millions and millions of strands of divine radiance splashed out and swept out from the place where the two sides clashed. How terrifying was this attack? Amidst the endless divine radiance, Yi Shiwen directly spread out his hands and suddenly tore apart the huge dragon formed by the endless Yin Qi. Countless laws exploded from Sun Jin's body. However, In Jun took advantage of this period of time to sublimate. All the life energy in his body was burning and turned into terrifying strength. The fear in his heart towards Yi Shiwen could be seen clearly. So, he didn't hesitate at all and directly broke out. "Wu Lord, since you want me to die, then I'll drag you down with me." Boundless magic surged out of In Jun's body, and the entire primal chaos shook. It was extremely terrifying. In Jun coldly looked at Yi Shiwen. Then, he suddenly blasted his fist out. It was unknown how much chaotic energy in the world had been transformed into Yin and Yang energies. Then, the Yin energy was controlled by him and blasted towards Yi Shiwen. In the primal chaos, this is my home ground. Don't you know that the chaotic Qi is formed by Yin and Yang Qi? Choosing to fight with me here will be the biggest mistake in your life. Yi Shiwen's expression was cold, and he didn't say a word. His body emitted endless golden light of merit and virtue. It actually stabilized the entire primal chaos. In Jun wanted to separate more Yin and Yang Qi, but he had no way at all. It was as if the primal chaos was imprisoned by someone. What? How is this possible? How much merit and virtue do you have? In Jun turned pale with fright. He could have the confidence to fight against Yi Shiwen largely because the chaotic Qi that could be seen everywhere in the primal chaos had become the biggest source of replenishment for him. However, he didn't expect that Yi Shiwen would suppress the chaotic Qi and cause his plan to fail. After Yi Shiwen smashed the sky full of Yin Qi with a punch, he only let out a long roar. His body emitted endless divine radiance and rushed to the front of Jun in one step. Pucci! Jun let out a blood-curdling scream as he was hit by Yishuan's attack. He had lost all his advantages at this moment. Yishuan's punch had pierced through his chest. Jun retreated again and again, coughing up large mouthfuls of blood. He was too aggrieved in this battle. He was one of the earliest rulers, and he had only seen many top powerhouses. Yishuan, a junior who had just attained the Tao in this era, was nothing in his eyes. However, he was actually suppressed by Yishuan now. How could he endure this? Yishuan didn't intend to let him go. He rushed over again. "Martial monarch, you've gone too far." The monarch roared, and the laws in his body shook. He turned into a divine rainbow that filled the sky and soared into the heavens. The entire primal chaos was shaken, and treasured splendor was emitted everywhere. Then, he rushed towards Yishuan to kill him. "It's useless. Your ending today has already been decided," Yishuan shouted. His eyes were cold and emotionless because he knew that he could not afford to relax at this moment. Otherwise, what would be destroyed would be none other than the entire martial epic. Boom! After Jun rushed in front of Yishuan, all his defenses were broken by Yishuan's sword. Then his body was almost cut in half. Bang! 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 Jun kept roaring, but it was of no use. Every strike would shatter him. His body would collapse, and his primordial spirit would also suffer heavy injuries. Yishuan's attack was too terrifying. He had 3,000 martial arts. He could slash out countless attacks every second. 3,000 different martial arts attacks didn't have the same type. All of them fell on Monarch's body. Jun kept screaming. Finally, he was directly beaten by Yishuan to the edge of the primal chaos. This was a terrifying battle that spanned across the entire primal chaos. The last move, Martial Monarch. "I will die, and you will die too," Jun roared. The entire primal chaos collapsed and turned into a world of Qi. It was an extremely terrifying scene. He was using an earth-shattering, unique skill. Unimaginable Qi surged like the sea. The rules and magical powers exploded in an instant. In an instant, the entire river of time was pulled out by him. He intercepted a part of the power and blasted it towards Yishuan. This was the ultimate attack. It involved the power of the entire time. In the entire primal chaos, no matter if it was the martial epic or the ancient epic, all the experts were shocked. They could clearly feel that the time in their epic was affected by Jun's peerless absolute art. Affected by the power of time, time once again exerted its power on them. That rainbow-colored radiance drowned everything. Nothing could be seen. The blazing radiance drowned everything. Everyone opened their heavenly eyes one after another. They wanted to see how Yishuan was doing. At that moment, a loud roar rang out. Then, a treasured sword seemed to slash down from the end of time, directly slashing the terrifying power of time. Rumble. This terrifying power of time was directly smashed. Not a single bit was left. Then, Yishuan's sword directly blasted on Jun's body. It didn't stop at all. Bang! Monarch exploded. However, he wasn't able to recover this time. That was because Monarch's spirit had been blown up several times by Yishuan just now. His spirit was already in tatters. He had already exhausted all of his strength to unleash that move to perish together with Yishuan. Even if he wasn't killed by Yishuan, it would be difficult for him to survive after using this move. In order to use such a terrifying attack, he paid a huge price. Now, it was finally the time for the power of chaos to bite back. His body was grabbed by Yishuan and integrated into the world tree. The world tree grew rapidly and truly became an extremely huge world. Jun was finally killed. However, Yishuan's current situation wasn't good either. This was because all sorts of power from the backlash surged towards him. That was the power of the era's destruction. If Yishuan wanted to suppress the martial Tao era, he had to go against them. On the other side of the battlefield, Jun finally killed the Young Lord. However, he also paid a price. His entire body exploded. He wasn't severely injured by the Young Lord, but by the power of destruction of the martial Dao era. After killing the Yin Lord and the Yang Lord, Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun immediately returned to suppress the entire martial Dao era. The two of them were like two stabilizing pillars. They firmly fixed this terrifying scene of destruction. On one side was the power of destruction. On the other side was the power of life. The two sides were competing with each other endlessly. Gradually, it became more and more terrifying. Some signs of destruction appeared in the martial Dao era. Mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. The universe was chaotic. The sun, moon, and stars were all collapsing. 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. This terrifying destruction went on for 100,000 years. 1/3 of the martial Dao era was destroyed. However, just when everyone felt that this destruction would never stop, the power of destruction suddenly disappeared. It came quickly and disappeared quickly as well. It disappeared without a trace in an instant. Chapter 3883. 100,000 years. The great calamity that everyone thought would never end had come to an end in just 100,000 years. It came suddenly and disappeared suddenly. This also proved many people's guesses. This destructive power wasn't undefeatable, and it wouldn't always exist. It was like it was programmed. When the time came, it would automatically come and destroy everything. In the past 100,000 years, the experts had been terrified at every moment. It was like they could be destroyed at any moment. Even when Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun presided over the martial epoch, they were still in a precarious situation. In the past 100,000 years, everyone had seen Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun vomit blood more than once or twice. In the beginning, they even suffered from the backlash of the destructive power, causing their bodies to explode. Later on, they would vomit blood from time to time. This made it hard to believe that nothing in the martial epoch could survive. After all, there had never been such a miracle since ancient times. Not a single epoch could survive forever. However, this time, the martial epoch relied on the unity of the entire martial epoch to block the destructive power of the epoch. This was something that had never happened before. The martial epoch was too powerful. It had a longer peak period than the other epochs. This allowed the martial epoch to have 10 times more half-step rulers than the other ancient epochs. Aside from Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun's hard work, the half-step rulers and Heavenly Venerate's hard work also played an important role in the martial epoch surviving this great calamity. They actually did it? That's impossible. Isn't the epic replacement the righteous path of the world? How do they do it? I don't believe it either. However, this is the truth. Does this mean that the martial epoch will continue to exist forever? 100,000 years later, the ancient epochs in the primal chaos immediately sensed that the great calamity had passed. However, what shocked them was that the martial epoch had not been destroyed. After the great calamity of this epoch, many people discovered that the shackles suppressing them had disappeared. Many people felt like they had returned to the best of times. Their cultivation speed soared. Many people broke through their cultivation realms. Within the world, an indescribable law was being born. It was a law that had never been born before. Because of these laws, a group of incomparably powerful creatures were born. These were all born as gods, powerful figures born from the power of the laws of heaven and earth. Among them, there were even terrifying existences that were born as imperial emperors and heavenly lords. These were the innate gods that would be born at the birth of every epoch. They were extremely terrifying. They were often powerful rulers at the beginning of the epoch, and their bloodlines would be passed down in the epoch. Their divine abilities and great techniques would also be passed down in the epoch. However, this epoch was different. When the new innate life forms were born because of the laws, the martial epoch had not ended yet. Thus, these powerful beings who were born to be kings met a tragedy. Before the martial epoch's experts could make a move, they killed or captured as slaves. Many of the law origins that could not materialize in time were snatched away and refined by the martial epoch's experts. To think that these strong, innate life forms had fallen to such a level. If the martial lord Yishiwen had not issued a decree at this time, stating that the life forms of every epoch had the right to live and forbade them from being exterminated at will, all the life forms born in the new epoch would have been slaughtered. At this time, the martial lord and the Qin lord worked together to refine a world at the periphery of the fortune realm. They placed these strong, innate life forms that had just been born or had yet to be born in there. That was practically the entire process of the birth of a new epoch. It would not be affected by the martial epoch, and it could develop into a brand new, never-before-seen civilized world. Even so, these new laws still permeated every corner of the martial epoch. As a result, new cultivation methods were born. Both martial monarch and Qin monarch passed down the cultivation methods of the new age. Given the two's strength in cultivation, they were the first to comprehend the new laws. Hence, after they passed down their cultivation techniques, it immediately caused a cultivation craze in the martial epoch. The grand magic even spread to the new era's quarantine zone. The Xiantian life forms that were born under the new magical laws were like fish in water. In just a million years, there were already peak experts, Empyreans, emperors, and even a half-step ruler. Such speed dumbfounded the experts of the martial epoch. Such speed was simply like flying. The first life forms born in every epoch were doted on by the world. With the protection of the world's luck, they could grow the fastest. In the legends of every epoch, the strongest were the horrifying existences born at the beginning of the world. Most epochs that focused on magic skills were like this. The earlier the epoch, the more terrifying the life forms born. However, epochs like the martial epoch, which focused on cultivation, were the opposite. True experts would only appear in the later epochs. This was because the more perfect the cultivation system and theories were, the more powerful experts they could give birth to. Until now, everyone seemed to have finally accepted the fact that they had survived until the next epoch. Of course, this process was not completely unscathed. However, compared to the fragmentation of the ancient epochs, it was much better. The old epoch did not break, but the new epoch was quietly born in the old epoch, like an old tree sprouting new buds. This was a brand new model, one that no one had experienced before. The epochs did not necessarily repel each other. They could merge and coexist. The people of the martial epoch and the people of the ancient epochs were watching. It wasn't until an earth-shattering event happened that the entire primal chaos was shocked. In this great calamity, the ancient epochs could no longer hold on. They had weak foundations in the first place. After hearing about the great calamities of a few epochs, it looked like they could no longer hold on. This time, they were finally going to fall apart. However, what surprised everyone was that this ancient epoch made a last-ditch effort. They actually sided with the martial epoch. They sided with the martial epoch and merged their epoch with the martial epoch. The person who handled this was Yishiwen. By relying on the power of the martial epoch, this ancient epoch regained its vigor. Furthermore, this ancient epoch sided with the martial epoch, making the great Tao of the martial epoch richer and more prosperous. This was equivalent to a win-win situation. For a time, this matter shocked the entire primal chaos epoch. This matter completely changed the mindset of the ancient epoch and the current epoch. They could only be enemies and kill each other. It was not that no one in the past had thought of cooperating with the current epoch and the ancient epoch. However, no one had been able to do it. However, all this was happening in the martial epoch. Many people wondered if this meant that the martial epoch was going to become an unprecedented great age. Now, every step the martial epoch took was unprecedented. Every step it took created history, reaching a realm that no one had ever reached before. After the first ancient epoch sided with the martial epoch and gained a new life, more and more ancient epochs started to side with the martial epoch. This made the martial epoch more prosperous and more experts appeared. They grew stronger and stronger. This was already a terrifying deterrent to those ancient epochs. Not every ancient epoch faced destruction. Not every ancient epoch's experts were willing to go to the martial epoch and listen to the arrangements of others. After all, In the original ancient epic, they were people who could summon the wind and summon the rain. They were indomitable existences. However, in the martial epic, they became ordinary. This was because there were too many peak experts in the current martial epic. They were too horrifying. And just like that, the new era quietly descended. Tens of millions of years had already passed. Those powerful sentient life forms of the new era, perhaps because of internal strife, or because of cultivation deviation or various other reasons, all died or were injured. What replaced them were the latecomers who came later. The martial epic's integration with a martial epic deepened. With the addition of the other ancient epics, the martial epic was unprecedentedly powerful and prosperous. On this day, the martial monarch Yi Shiwen, who was regarded as the sky of the martial epic, finally came out of closed-door cultivation. As he came out, boundless multicolored light and purple chi covered the entire martial epic. All the life forms sensed Yi Shiwen's exit. Lord Martial Monarch, you may live forever. Countless life forms prostrated on the ground, not daring to raise their heads. Before that person, no matter what level of existence, they had to lower their noble heads, not daring to show any disrespect. Even the experts of the many ancient epochs in the primal chaos did not dare to show any disrespect. Yi Shiwen stood with his hands clasped behind his back. Since the birth of the new epoch, he had been in closed-door cultivation. In the blink of an eye, tens of millions of years had passed. It was true that there was no time in cultivation. During these tens of millions of years, his cultivation had also improved greatly. He had forcefully preserved the martial epic. It was a difficult process, but now he had finally reaped some rewards. He had advanced from the late sovereign realm to the peak sovereign realm in one go. He had completely stood at the peak of countless epics. He no longer had to worry about sneak attacks from the sovereigns in the mysterious place. It's time to put an end to this. Chapter 3884. After Yi Shiwen came out of seclusion, he didn't charge into the mysterious place immediately. He waited for Qin Jun to come out of seclusion. Qin Jun was his ally. Just like that, they waited for 1,000,000 years. During that 1,000,000 years, the entire world had undergone a huge change. The laws of the world had become even more lenient, and even more experts had appeared. What shocked everyone the most was that after Qin Jun and Martial Monarch, another ruler appeared in the martial epic. This time, the one who became a ruler was none other than the current Middle Heavenly Venerate. A Middle Heavenly Venerate was already an outstanding figure among the many half-step rulers. Although he couldn't compare to Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun, who became a ruler at a time when it was completely unsuitable for them to become rulers, the Middle Heavenly Venerate was already a ruler. However, after countless years, a new epoch had begun. The world was suitable for the birth of rulers again. Furthermore, the current martial epoch was more than twice as strong as it was before the Great Apocalypse. That was to say, Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun had expanded the pool of the entire martial epoch. It could accommodate even more rulers. Under such circumstances, a Middle Heavenly Venerate achieved Tao. After achieving Tao, he was no longer the vice-ruler of the Fortune God dynasty, but called himself Purple Myrtle Heavenly Monarch. However, he didn't break away from the Fortune God dynasty system. This system had been polished for countless years and was already very stable. It was hard to break, but there was no need to. Just like how Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun didn't establish their own sects after achieving Tao. Because there was no need. It wasn't that they didn't establish their own sects, or that they considered themselves beneath Qin Jun. Most of the time, there was just no need. However, Purple Myrtle Heavenly Monarch still left the Fortune God capital and established the Purple Myrtle sect, spreading his own great Tao. As for the Fortune God dynasty, they chose another half-step ruler to inherit the position of Middle Heavenly Venerate. Too many things had happened in the last 1,000,000 years. Because the great Taos of heaven and earth permitted it, the half-step sovereigns saw hope. They wanted to affirm their Tao and become sovereigns in this new age. Only by becoming a ruler could one become the ruler of the chaos epoch. In the end, a half-step ruler was just a half-step ruler. Finally, on this day, Qin Jun also came out of seclusion. When he came out, his aura also soared into the sky. A terrifying scene that had never been seen before was released. A green lotus bloomed in the chaos, and Qin Jun slowly appeared within it. "Friend, it's time to put an end to this," Yi Shiwen indifferently said. "Yes, it is time to end this. If the martial epoch wants to exist forever, this is unavoidable," Qin Jun said. Yi Shiwen called little Yuya over and told her to take care of the heavenly court. This battle would be dangerous, but he had to go. This was for the sake of all the living beings of the martial epoch, as well as for his Tao of eternal life. Before the two of them left, Heavenly Lord Zi Wei came out of seclusion. She looked at the two and said, "Fellow Taoists, do you need my help? There's no need. You stay here. If something happens to us, at least we still have you to guard the martial epoch. Furthermore, it's not like we don't have helpers in this mysterious place. The Fortune Heavenly Lord is still there to restrain the strong enemies." Qin Jun shook his head and sent the purple myrtle Heavenly Lord back. Both of them knew what kind of terrifying battle awaited them. The purple myrtle Heavenly Lord would play a huge role in guarding the martial epoch, but if she were to get involved in the battle in the mysterious place, she might not be able to do much. After all, he had just attained the Tao, and it had only been a short time. Meanwhile, the rulers in the mysterious place were terrifying existences who had lived through at least one epoch, and there were many who had lived through more than 10 epochs. The two of them advanced into the primal chaos. At this time, many of the ancient epochs were shocked. The two of them had finally come out, and this time it was clear that they were heading for the eternal sage and the primordial heavenly lord in the mysterious place. This was going to be another shocking battle, a battle against the Tao. The primordial sacred land and the eternal sacred land were trembling under the pressure of the two rulers, Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun. They could not even speak. But neither Yi Shiwen nor Qin Jun had any intention of destroying these two sacred lands. At their level of cultivation, it was impossible for them to be so narrow-minded. Although the two sacred lands have been founded by the eternal sage and the primordial heavenly lord, over the countless years, more than one ruler had occupied them, leaving behind their own teachings. It would be a pity to destroy them. Moreover, no one could help them in this battle. Even destroying the two sacred lands would be of no help. The two of them reached the depths of the primal chaos and finally made their move. The two of them glanced at each other, then made their move. Both of them unleashed their most terrifying attacks. Rumble. In an instant, heaven and earth split apart, and the entire primal chaos was torn apart. All of the ancient epochs of the primal chaos were dumbfounded. The two of them were not going the usual way, not through the eternal gate or the primordial divine bridge. They were going to carve their own way to the mysterious place. But the two of them did indeed have the strength to do so. Back then, the primordial heavenly lord and the eternal sage were probably just as strong. The entire primal chaos was torn apart, and endless divine light burst forth. The mysterious place was blasted open again. The half-step rulers could only wait for that one opportunity every epoch. But for Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun, that wasn't the case. They were strong enough. The two of them fought their way into the mysterious place. Their eyes blazed like torches, and as far as the eye could see, all of the secrets of the mysterious place could no longer be hidden from the two of them. This was the second time Yi Shiwen had come to the mysterious place. The first time, he had only been a half-step ruler. Compared now, he was more than 100 times stronger. One powerful aura after another in the mysterious place was startled awake. These were the many sovereigns in the mysterious place. They were all shocked by Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun's terrifying energy and Tao. What? There's actually someone who can achieve such a terrifying Tao outside? And there's two of them at the same time? A ruler exclaimed. But Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun didn't even look at them. They continued to pass through the mysterious place. Eternal Sage, Primordial Heavenly Lord, I'm coming to kill you. Yi Shiwen roared. The entire mysterious land was trembling. At that moment, a figure finally appeared. It was a man of unmatched elegance. He was tall and slender, and he looked extremely handsome. Divine splendor radiated from his body, making him seem like a god of creation. Eternal Sage. Yi Shiwen spat out the man's name. This man was the Eternal Sage. He'd seen his portrait in the Eternal Sacred Land before. On the other side, another figure with a terrifying aura appeared. It was a man of unparalleled stature. He looked a little rough, but the entire primal chaos was under his control. Primordial Heavenly Lord, Yi Shiwen said, looking at the figure. Very good. Both of you are here, Yi Shiwen said coolly. I'll kill both of you at the same time to avoid any future troubles. You want to kill us? Ha ha, what a joke. The primordial heavenly lord roared with laughter, as if he'd heard the most ridiculous joke in the world. It's finally time to end everything. A terrifying and monstrous aura suddenly swept out from the depths of the mysterious place. A figure flew over rapidly. His body carried boundless power of creation, as if he could open a new world. Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord, Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun said in unison. Yes, this was the Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord who'd come from the depths of the mysterious place. He'd sensed Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun's presence. In fact, this wasn't the first time Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun had come to the mysterious place. However, neither of them had seen the Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord before. They'd been too weak at the time. People as weak as they weren't qualified for him to meet them. He was only keeping the Eternal Holy Monarch and the others busy so that the Eternal Holy Monarch and the others wouldn't be able to kill the two of them. His hard work had finally paid off. Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord, you haven't asked me if you want to go over. An even colder voice rang out. A figure as large as a mountain stood in front of the Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord. This person had scales all over his body, and his demonic aura soared into the sky. However, he wasn't sinister at all. Instead, he was magnanimous and magnanimous. The demonic path had reached an unimaginable level in his hands. Even Yi Mo, the ancestor of the demonic path in the current martial epic, looked exceptionally small in front of this person. He was extremely powerful in the demonic path. The demon ancestor. Yi Shiwen instantly guessed the identity of this person. This person shouldn't be anyone else. He was the demon ancestor who'd once dominated the demonic epic. Yi Shiwen instantly understood. No wonder the Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord hadn't come out after entering the mysterious place. He'd been entangled by 3 experts of the same level. Even if the Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord had extraordinary abilities, he wouldn't have been able to escape. At this moment, the 3 of them had clearly formed an alliance. From what Qin Jun had said about the Primal Chaos Green Lotus, it wasn't hard to figure out that the Eternal Sage and the Ancient Sage had fought over the Primal Chaos Green Lotus. Clearly, their relationship wasn't that close. However, now, they had formed an alliance. In that case, it was clear who this alliance was targeting, the martial epic. The 3 rulers of the martial epic were clearly on the same side. The martial epic was their foundation. As long as the martial epic wasn't destroyed, they would have endless possibilities. Even if they hadn't seen the Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord before, they would have immediately decided to form an alliance. And now, in the mysterious place, 2 great factions had been formed in an instant. However, there weren't just these rulers in the mysterious place. Many powerful auras were faintly discernible in the surroundings of the battlefield. Chapter 3885. These peak sovereigns were not the only ones in this mysterious place. There were also many sovereigns from past epics. Now, the confrontation between the 6 primes of the 2 factions had startled these sovereigns, so they surrounded Shao Chun. These sovereigns could be said to be unprecedented. Every one of them had once ruled over an epic. Now that they surrounded Shao Chun, how horrifying was this situation? However, Yi Shiwen remained calm. This was not the first time he had been surrounded by so many sovereigns, so there was nothing to fear. Fellow Taoists, The martial epic intends to defy the heavens and cut off our path of life. Are you all going to sit back and do nothing? The eternal sage shouted. Upon hearing this, many people indeed felt somewhat restless. It would have been fine if it were anything else. However, if the martial epic wanted to continue living forever, it would cut off their path of life. This was because even sovereigns could not truly survive the endlessly changing epics. It was just that their lifespans were much longer than regular life forms. Many people cast their gazes on Yi Shiwen and Qinjun. Yi Shiwen did not panic. He only stood upright with his hands behind his back. Then, he looked at the sovereigns and said, "My martial epic has already succeeded. We have found a true path to eternal life. Isn't this what everyone dreams of? We do not have to experience the changing of epics. We do not have to worry about dying of old age. We cultivators cultivate so bitterly, standing out from billions of life forms. What is it for? To seek the Tao? That is just one of the reasons. The most important thing is not dying. The 6 paths of reincarnation are fake. There is no afterlife. If one falls, there is nothing left. I believe everyone here is clearer than me on this point. However, that is your martial epic, isn't it? What does it have to do with us?" A strong sovereign asked. "This is indeed a path opened by my martial epic. However, everyone can join in as well. Assimilate into my martial epic, and you can obtain eternal life. It is much better than living in fear day and night." Yi Shiwen said indifferently, "If we join the martial epic, we have to lower our heads to them. Does fellow Taoist want to live under someone else's roof? As long as we break the martial epic and obtain the luck of the world and the great Tao origin, given the strength of the martial epic, we can live for at least several epochs." The ancient sage shouted. "And then? Search for the next epoch, destroy the next epoch, extend his life, and bitterly wait for the birth of a perfect epoch that he didn't even know existed? When that time comes, won't you all have to join that perfect era? You will have to start all over again. What's the difference? I don't like to place my hopes on the illusory bodies of others. Instead of waiting, it's better to create a perfect era with me," Yi Shiwen said faintly. Many of the sovereigns began to stir. Both sides' words made sense, and many of the sovereigns had their own ideas. Some were unwilling to live under someone else's roof, while others were unwilling to continue waiting like this. Fellow Taoists, this battle is unavoidable. If you leave now, I can let bygones be bygones. But since you've decided to stay, I'll have to ask all of you to make a decision. Are you going to stand on my side, or are you going to stand on their side? A battle to determine life and death. A battle to determine the outcome. Yi Shiwen said indifferently. On the other side, the eternal sage also said, "Today is the day we fight to the death with the martial epic. If you're not a friend, you are an enemy. If you're not a friend, you will be eliminated." The eternal sage threatened forcefully. Everyone knew that others could lower their heads and join the martial epic, but they could not. Hence, they could only fight to the death with the martial epic's 3 sovereigns. Both sides issued strong threats, enraging the sovereigns. They understood that both sides were unparalleled on this issue. The eternal sage sovereign also issued a threat. They could either stand on his side and eliminate these martial epic primes. Otherwise, after the eternal sage sovereign eliminated these martial epic primes, it would be the sovereign's turn. On the other side, Yi Shiwen also sent out a signal that he was either an enemy or a friend. After the martial epic wiped out all the enemies, they would conquer the mysterious land and truly unify the world. There was no way these people would try to smooth things over. The 2 sides weren't trying to push these sovereigns over to each other's side. They just wanted to make one thing clear. They weren't going to allow these sovereigns to watch from the sidelines and reap the benefits. Suddenly, the atmosphere of the entire mysterious place became heavy. After pondering for a long time, many people began to make their own decisions. At this moment, they had no choice but to make their choice. None of the 6 great supremes was someone they couldn't contend against. They were already standing at the peak of the ruler domain. Although they felt sullen, they also understood that it was time to determine the victor and the loser. It was time to end the chaotic situation in this world. Finally, someone made a move. He stood behind the eternal sage sovereign. Soon, after this person, there was a second and then a third. Everyone made their choice. It was basically a tie. Some people didn't believe Yi Shiwen and didn't want to lower their heads. However, there were also people who weren't willing to wait like this forever. They were willing to establish an eternal epoch with their own hands. Since that's the case, the situation is clear. Yi Shiwen shouted, "Fellow Taoists, please lend me your strength to crush them and conquer the world. Kill." Many top powerhouses behind Yi Shiwen shouted in succession. The sovereigns behind the eternal sage sovereign were not to be outdone. They released their strongest auras. Kill them and divide the martial epic. In that instant, the eternal sage sovereign made his move. A rain of light instantly burst out. Those were the terrifying light of the laws, and they immediately bombarded Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen made his move and clashed fiercely with the eternal sage sovereign. This was the start of a great battle. This was a terrifying battle between sovereigns. Dozens of sovereigns attacked at the same time. Both sides were evenly matched, which was why it was so terrifying. Yi Shiwen faced the eternal sage sovereign, while Qin Jun attacked the eternal sage sovereign. The grudge between the fortune creation heavenly monarch and the demon ancestor, which had been entangled for many years, erupted at this moment. The fortune creation heavenly monarch had been fighting one against three over the years. It had been too difficult for him. Fortunately, the three of them weren't actually united. They rarely attacked him at the same time, and it was mostly one against one. Among the three of them, the demon ancestor had attacked him the most times. Behind the two sides, the sovereigns were also clashing. They all understood that there was no way out. If they couldn't defeat the other party, they would be the ones to die. Since they had made their decision, they wouldn't look left and right anymore. At this moment, Yi Shiwen, who was being targeted by the eternal sage sovereign, suddenly attacked the other sovereigns who were charging at him. He threw out a ball of lightning source power. Rumble! A terrifying explosion occurred in an instant, and the entire mysterious place collapsed. The sovereigns on the eternal sage monarch side were caught off guard and were hit by the explosion. Several sovereigns were killed on the spot, and a dozen or so sovereigns were severely injured. The situation of the sovereigns' battlefield immediately reversed, and the martial epic side gained the upper hand. When the martial epic sovereigns saw this, their morale soared. On the other side, the eternal sage sovereign's morale plummeted. This was a trump card that Yi Shiwen had prepared for a long time. He had completely infused the power of the heavenly tribulation into it. Moreover, it wasn't just a single heavenly tribulation. He had fused both the heavenly tribulation and the heavenly tribulation when he was a half-step sovereign. Yi Shiwen had originally done this to guard against a sneak attack from the eternal sage sovereign and the others. Back then, Yi Shiwen had been too weak. Only by preparing this trump card could he deal with them. However, there was no need for it now. How dare you? When the eternal sage sovereign saw that his side had instantly fallen into a disadvantage, he couldn't help but fly into a rage. Then, he summoned a gigantic door from the void and ruthlessly pressed down on Yi Shiwen. Rumble! This gigantic door was the gates of eternity. However, this gates of eternity could do nothing to Yi Shiwen. A gigantic tree appeared on Yi Shiwen's body. That big tree was as big as the entire world. It was protecting Yi Shiwen inside it, and he couldn't be invaded by anything. The world tree. The world tree has fallen into your hands. The eternal sage sovereign's eyes widened. Yi Shiwen's golden body of virtue was already very difficult to break. With the world tree's existence, it was practically impossible to break through Yi Shiwen's defenses. The world tree was too horrifying. It was said that it was the starting point of all worlds and all epics. Therefore, no matter what kind of attacks or laws of the great Tao, they would be frozen in place. It could be said that as long as the world tree existed, all magical techniques and laws of the world would be useless. It was no wonder that Yi Shiwen had dared to so confidently charge into this mysterious place. There was such a barrier. However, hadn't the world tree been destroyed a long time ago? Even if some seedlings had survived, they shouldn't have been able to grow to such a complete form. However, there was no time for him to think too much about this. This was because Yi Shiwen was already charging towards him. Dying. The Eternal Sage Sovereign wasn't an ordinary person either. He used the Gates of Eternity as his defense. Then, he wielded a long saber and charged towards Yi Shiwen. Rumble! A terrifying collision erupted in an instant. Chapter 3886. The Eternal Sage's aura soared to its limit. He was different from the heavenly monarchs that Yi Shiwen had faced in the past. He was so powerful that it was almost unimaginable. This was the first time Yi Shiwen had faced a peak dominator. He was an existence that had reached the pinnacle of his domain. He was flawless and flawless. If Yi Shiwen had encountered the Eternal Sage in the past, he would have died without a doubt. But now, Yi Shiwen had the strength to stand on equal footing with him. Boom! 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 A terrifying battle broke out between both sides. The world tree transformed behind Yi Shiwen and collided with the Eternal Gate many times. Yi Shiwen released the revered martial seal in his hand. It had already transformed into the martial monarch seal. Its might was boundless. It could create the world, and it could also destroy the world. The current him had also reached a certain level of power. The martial lord seal continued to blast at the Eternal Sage, but was blocked by the long saber in his mouth. The two peerless magic tools continued to collide in the void, collapsing and annihilating everything. Yi Shiwen also took advantage of this gap and stepped out. He pinched a seal with his hand and turned it into the martial monarch seal technique. His hand turned into a seal and then smashed it down in one breath. The 6 paths of reincarnation fist punched through the void with his other hand and landed heavily on the Eternal Sage's body. The Eternal Saint Monarch continued to conjure up various techniques and blasted them in Yi Shiwen's direction. Both sides had countless techniques, and in this terrifying exchange, an unimaginably dazzling immortal light burst out. It's no use, Martial Lord. You can't defeat me. The Eternal Sage was protected by the Eternal Gate, so he was fearless and fearless. Do you think I can't break your Eternal Gate? Yi Shiwen sneered. He rushed in front of the Eternal Sage. Both sides unleashed many techniques at each other, but they had no scruples because they were both protected by treasures. The Eternal Gate was a treasure that the Eternal Sage had refined for many years. It could be said to be both offensive and defensive. It was unimaginably powerful. Boundless Gungjin ancestral chi manifested in his hand, and then it swept out in one breath, directly sweeping a huge hole in the terrifyingly powerful Eternal Gate. The Gung metal ancestral chi was invincible. It was one of the strongest treasures that had been bred in the entire Gung metal era. At this moment, in Yi Shiwen's hands, it erupted with unimaginably terrifying power. Impossible. The Eternal Holy Sage could only watch helplessly as a huge hole appeared in the Eternal Gate. Yi Shiwen used this hole to kill his way to the Eternal Holy Sage. It wasn't as if Yi Shiwen was right in front of him, but was actually countless years away. Martial Monarch Seal. Yi Shiwen's hand transformed into a mountain-like, terrifying ribbon seal and fiercely smashed down. Bang! The Eternal Saint Sage was severely injured in an instant. His entire body was almost torn apart. He coughed up blood as he retreated. He was completely suppressed by Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen, who had fought hundreds of battles, naturally wouldn't let go of such an opportunity. He directly crushed his opponent and ruthlessly suppressed him. After losing the upper hand, the Eternal Saint Sage was already at a disadvantage. Now that he was severely injured, he was even less able to display his true combat strength. The battle lasted for 10 days and 10 nights. Yi Shiwen finally gained the upper hand. He used the World Tree to suppress this side of the world. At the same time, he also suppressed the Eternal Saint Sage. There was no way for him to escape. In the end, Yi Shiwen killed him with a punch. This punch pierced through the Eternal Saint Sage, and at the same time, completely ignited the Eternal Saint Sage's immortal spirit and burned it to ashes. This terrifying battle finally came to an end. Although it took some time in the process, it was worth it. Yi Shiwen was almost unharmed when he killed the Eternal Saint Sage. Yi Shiwen, who had the World Tree, was almost invincible. No one could destroy the World Tree, and no one could defeat him. He put away the Eternal Saint Sage's corpse. On the other side, the battle between Qin Jun and the Eternal Heaven Monarch was also coming to an end. Qin Jun, who had the Green Lotus of Chaos on his back, held a long sword in his hand. His swordsmanship was divine, and every strike of his sword shook the entire mysterious place. The Eternal Heaven Monarch was no match for him. Even with the Eternal Divine Bridge, he couldn't stop Qin Jun's advance. He was beaten back again and again. In the end, Qin Jun chopped off his head with his sword, ending his path, his glory, and his everything. Qin Jun's green robes were stained with blood. He wasn't unscathed in the process, but he recovered with great magic power. Now, there's only one person left on the battlefield, and that was the battle between the Fortune Creation Heaven Monarch and the Demon Ancestor. The battle between the Demon Ancestor and the Fortune Creation Heaven Monarch had also reached a white-hot stage. At this time, the Demon Ancestor suddenly realized that his allies, the Eternal Saint Sage and the Eternal Saint Sage, had been defeated and killed. He was the only one left. And it was this momentary distraction that gave the Fortune Creation Heaven Monarch an opportunity. The Fortune Creation Heaven Palm struck the Demon Ancestor's body, piercing him and seriously injuring him. In the distance, the Fortune Creation Heaven Map flew over and stunned the Demon Ancestor. Seeing Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun coming to surround him, the Demon Ancestor couldn't help but smile miserably. I, the Demon Ancestor, have been strong all my life and have never been weaker than anyone. I never thought that I would fall here today. Fortune Creation Heaven Monarch, I regret not killing you first. Even if I have to pay a price, it's worth it. The Fortune Creation Heaven Monarch sneered. You should have known that this day would come. What kind of person was the Demon Ancestor? He naturally wasn't willing to die without a fight. He wanted to fight to the death, but he still couldn't escape from Yi Shiwen, Qin Jun, and the Fortune Creation Heaven Monarch. The Fortune Creation Heaven Monarch had beaten him half to death, and then he was punched through by Yi Shiwen. Finally, his head was cut off by Qin Jun's sword, and his spirit was ignited. In the end, he died completely. The battle finally came to an end. With the death of the three great supremes, the powerful sovereigns who followed the Eternal Saint Sage, the Eternal Saint Sage, and the Demon Ancestor also couldn't escape death. This was a great battle between the two factions. They couldn't afford to be lenient. Although Yi Shiwen felt that it was a pity that they had cultivated for billions of years and experienced countless hardships to obtain their current cultivation, he didn't show any mercy when it was time to make his move. As Yi Shiwen, Qin Jun, and the Fortune Creation Heaven Monarch joined the battle, the sovereigns who had low morale in the first place finally couldn't hold on any longer. They collapsed on the spot and were slaughtered. This mysterious land became a horrifying place where the corpses of countless sovereigns were buried. The news of the martial epic's three great supremes' complete victory shook the entire primal chaos. At the same time, many people understood that this battle was the one that would decide the world. After this, no one could stop the martial epic from unifying the world. Sure enough, after the news spread, the sovereigns also announced that they would join the martial epic. The entire world was in an uproar, especially when the ancient epochs governed by the sovereigns chose to join the martial epic, rapidly strengthening the entire martial epic. As for the epics that stood against Yi Shiwen, their heavenly venerables had already fallen. Now, they felt like the sky was collapsing. Now that the martial epic was becoming stronger and stronger, it was about to unify the world and realize the eternal epic in the modern world. As for those epics that stood against Yi Shiwen and were about to be wiped out, They were incomparably terrified. They quickly sent a representative to the martial epoch to ask for forgiveness. However, to their surprise, Yishuan didn't have any intention of killing them. On the contrary, he allowed them to join the martial epoch. Of course, their treatment couldn't be compared to the ancient epochs that joined at the beginning, but it was still better than being wiped out. To Yi Shiwen, Qin Jun, and the Fortune Creation Heaven Monarch, these ancient epochs that didn't even have sovereigns were no threat at all. Whether they were wiped out or not was just a matter of turning their hands. It didn't matter at all. There were no other epochs in the world, only the martial epoch. They had finally completed a glorious undertaking that no one in the past and no one in the future would be able to repeat. This had turned the martial epoch into an epoch that would last forever. As long as all living beings managed to corroborate their Tao, they could transcend beyond the 3 realms and the 5 elements. There would be no sudden world-destroying calamities. Or rather, even if there were, with the strength of the martial epoch's 3 primes and the many sovereigns that joined them, they could suppress it. Time passed day by day. In the blink of an eye, another epoch replaced the martial epoch. However, this time, the people of the martial epoch no longer panicked. Compared to the previous epoch, the martial epoch this time was much stronger. The various sovereigns, half-step sovereigns, and heavenly venerates worked together to stabilize the entire martial epoch, stabilizing it. Furthermore, with the 3 primes making a move, they quickly stabilized this horrifying calamity. Even more types of natural laws appeared, and even more sentient life forms appeared. It was exactly the same as when the last great era was born. However, this time, the various factions were already experienced and had a tacit understanding. They just had to deal with it the same way as last time. As the epochs changed, 10 epochs passed in the blink of an eye. The martial epoch was unprecedentedly strong. Since ancient times, there had never been another epoch stronger than the martial epoch. On this day, one of the 3 primes, the martial monarch Yi Shiwen, suddenly came out of closed-door cultivation. He let out a startling roar, and an incredibly terrifying might instantly enveloped the entire martial epoch. This startled everyone. A figure flew out of the martial epoch, flying to the edge of the universe. It was Yi Shiwen. At this moment, he seemed to have merged with the entire primal chaos. Every move he made contained the charm of the great Tao. At the edge of the primal chaos, an old man in Taoist robes smiled faintly. "Fellow Taoist, you finally achieved your Tao. Congratulations." "How did you know that I would achieve my Tao?" Yi Shiwen asked. "I didn't know," the old man said slowly. "But I knew that someone would achieve his Tao. Since I cast the wordless Taoist steel, it was only a matter of time. However, I didn't expect that after waiting for hundreds of epochs, someone who could discuss Tao with me finally appeared. So, fellow Taoist has seen everything that happened in the past few years?" Yi Shiwen asked. "No, I didn't have time to pay attention to it in the past few years." "Fellow Taoist came here as soon as you achieved your Tao. You must have felt the threat of the outer realms," the old man in Taoist robes said. Yi Shiwen nodded with a solemn expression. He looked over and saw that beyond the edge of the primal chaos, beyond the crystal wall, there was an endless army of the outer realms. Boundless black gas drowned everything. They were special creatures, different from the creatures of the martial epoch and all the ancient epochs. It's all thanks to fellow Taoist keeping watch at the edge of the primal chaos. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Yi Shiwen said, "It's all right. This is what I should do. After all, it's the world that I created," the old man in Taoist robes said. "Since fellow Taoist has achieved his Tao, I can go all out and fight. Does fellow Taoist want to come with me? Let's go, let's go." The 2 figures left the primal chaos and entered another crystal wall. The war between the 2 civilizations could break out at any moment. End of book. That you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.